Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Wollman, Senator Abourezk, other distinguished members of the panel. I too am proud to be a part of this distinguished panel, but also to meet with the Farmers Union Convention here in South Dakota. I've known and watched the operations of the Farmers Union over the years, and I see a great parallel between the objectives of the Farmers Home Administration and the Farmers Union. Our objective, as many of you know, and I see a lot of friends, people that I know out here that have been associated with the Farmers Home Administration, both as advisors and borrowers, county committeemen, and others. Our objective is to preserve the family farm and strengthen our rural communities and alleviate rural poverty. I'm going to break my remarks down into two categories. The first one is the Emergency Livestock Loan Program that was alluded to earlier, and the second part to the Production Emergency Loan Program. The Emergency Livestock Loan Program was started about 2.5 years ago, and it came into being because of the adverse cost-price relationship facing our livestock producers at that time. And it involved the beef cattle producers, the dairy cattle producers, swine producers, sheep producers, and chicken and turkey producers. This program has been revised twice since it started. Many of you may remember that it was an 80% guarantee, and now it was 80% at $250,000 maximum. Now it is a 90% guarantee with a $350,000 maximum. Individual farmers are eligible for this assistance, as well as partnerships and family farm corporations. We have had quite a little experience in this program. We have about $60 million exposure here in South Dakota. We're one of the highest 5 states in the country in participation in this program. And I think that the reason for that is that we have had in many of our counties 3 years of back-to-back drought together with an adverse cost-price relationship, particularly with our cow-calf operators and our cattle feeders. These emergency livestock loans are made and serviced by the banks. The only contact that the Farmers Home Administration has is with your lender. In many instances, you never contact us, we don't contact you. All of our work is done between our office and your lender. We merely issue a contract of guarantee wherein we guarantee to pay 90% of any loss, including interest, that this lender might sustain if your operations should go under. The interest between you and the lender is a negotiated interest. I've seen several of these contracts just in the last few days, and they run anywhere from 9 to 9.5, 9.25. There are no additional charges made by the Farmers Home Administration to the lender. There's no service fees that the lender or the borrower has to pay. It is a line of credit, and the maximum, as I mentioned, is $350,000, and this can fluctuate up and down. If the maximum line of credit, for instance, is set at $150,000, you can borrow up to $150,000, pay off, drop it down to $75,000, come back up again to the $150,000 as is needed. Loan purposes I'm not going to go into those other than to say that almost any farm purpose can be included in emergency livestock loan. Most all of them have some refinancing, and when the contract is issued, the borrower owes the bank a sum of money. This is included right in the contract. The addition of livestock and equipment, the addition of operating expense can be included, and as Mr. Donley just mentioned, the program has been extended just recently to September 30th, 1978. There's very little red tape with it. I think there's 3 forms to be filled out, none in which you have to fill out. All of them are filled out by the lender. He presents the program to the Farmers Home Administration, and if we feel that the operation appears to be sound, generate enough income to pay off the loan, we'll issue the contract right there. Many of these are done in a matter of 4 or 5 days. The other area that I'd like to visit with you about just briefly here is the Production Emergency Loan Program. This is a program that was activated when the counties were designated as disaster areas here last summer. All of the counties in South Dakota have been declared as disaster areas except for Clay, Union, Fall River, and Custer. One county in South Dakota was declared for drought and flood within a 3-week period, all in the same county. There's one problem with the emergency program in that we have to come up with 5 years of records. The program provides that in order to be eligible, it must be shown that you have suffered a 20% loss in one of your basic enterprises. And one of your basic enterprises, a basic enterprise is one that generates at least 25% of your total gross farm income. Therein lies a problem. Most farmers just do not have the kind of records that it takes to come up with this 5 years of average production. Now, this has been alleviated somewhat in recent weeks, wherein we've been advised that we can use the averages of the South Dakota Livestock Crop and Reporting Service to come up with the averages for that county for feed crops, your feed crops. But we still have to have the records for your production of livestock and for your average production on your cash crops. These loans can be scheduled over a 7-year period with a balloon payment of not more than 40% of the loan in the 7th year, and then if it's necessary, it can be extended for 5 additional years. There is provision for deferring principal payments. This we expect to use quite often this year. In other words, what can happen here, a loan can be set up for 7 years, we can defer the principal for first 3 years and balloon the 7th year payment. We're finding that this is necessary because of the drought and the adverse cost-price relationships. All of the loans, of course, must show, based upon a farm and home plan, that they can be repaid. There is another eligibility requirement, and that is there is a test for credit. If you're able to get the credit you need from your normal credit source, then you're unable to obtain one of these loans. You must be without commercial credit. In this program also we can assist individual farmers, corporation farmers, as well, and partnerships. Loan purposes can be for almost any farm purpose, and we've stated it this way. The money that we loan you at the 5% interest rate, in other words, this is the amount of your loss as calculated from your records. The amount we loan you at 5% can be used for any purpose for which you would have used the money had you raised a crop. The refinancing of land can also come into this under what we call a major adjustment. The interest rate on this part of your loan, if it's necessary, is 8 3/4%. The refinancing of livestock and equipment can come under this, refinancing of land, as I mentioned, or even the purchase of additional land, and that can be scheduled over an additional 40-year period. Operating expenses can be included. For instance, if the amount of your loss and the amount of the loan at 5% is not adequate, we can include additional operating funds at 8 3/4 and schedule that over a year or a little better. These loans are available now through 1977, and we would like to urge you to apply as early as you can, because we intend to process these loans on a first-come, first-served basis. We've added 20 new people into our program here in South Dakota in the last few weeks, and we intend to add more as the need arises. We intend to meet our commitments to the farmers of South Dakota. We have some applications on hand. We expect an awful lot more between now and next spring. These loans are complicated. Many of the farmers that are coming to us already have 1, 2, or 3 of these loans already. And to work our way into that operation, together with the bank loans that he has, it's a complicated and time-consuming procedure. So I would just like to ask you to be patient with us in the processing of these loans, and I would pledge to you that we will do the best job that we can to meet the needs of farmers here in South Dakota. And I'd like to thank Ben Radcliffe for asking me to be on this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maurice McLinn, for that explanation. Don't worry about the time too much because the meal, as I understand it, where's Ben? I think it's going to be provided here and catered in here, isn't that right? And if we run over 15 minutes or so, it'll take them that long to get set up and simply won't be a problem. So just be patient and we'll have the final statement now and then we'll have a chance to listen to you and hopefully answer your questions. Jim Eichstadt is going to speak briefly to you. Jim is a farm boy from Woolsey, graduated from college and has been added to the Farmers Union staff here in the last several months, and he's a young farmer activities director. And I think that this drought has been particularly hard on newly established young farmers with the heavy loans that they carry and that sort of thing. And he's going to speak just briefly at this time. Jim, please.
Thank you, Harvey. And okay, with the discussions we've had today on this drought panel, it seems fairly obvious that the drought is a very serious issue. I needn't elaborate on the many bad effects this will have on South Dakota agriculture as we know it today. There are a couple things I'd like to point out, however, ones that concern us particularly and that we have been working very hard on. We know that the drought is endangering the family farm system. We feel that the family farm system is the best the best system we have. It's preferable to corporate agriculture, and it's very bad to see this threat to it. Corporate agriculture is taking advantage of it, moving in. We know that the drought is driving many farmers out of business, especially the young farmers. And with young farmers leaving the farm, going to the cities and out of state perhaps, we also aggravate the unemployment situation. This makes for a very bad overall situation which we're trying very hard to avert. We also know that the tax base of our present personal property tax system is weakened. This threatens our ability to finance on the state and local level our school boards and provide other essential government services. So the Farmers Union then has served as an effective means, a vehicle for farmers to express their needs and preferences to the various state and federal agencies responsible for administering agricultural policy. We have advised both the state and federal governments on our needs. We've told them how serious the situation is, and we've recommended a variety of different measures to help meet our needs here. And we've found that farmers are very willing to work through our organization and trying to better their position. Okay, we've also been very effective in communicating with our state congressional delegation in Washington. We appreciate the fine support and understanding they've given us and look forward to more productive cooperation with them. There are a number of programs which over this past summer we have come up with. I don't have the time to mention them all or to describe them, but there are two in particular which I feel are important and which we feel are very necessary if farmers are to get a fair shake. The first is a resolution which our State Board of Directors passed at their June meeting out at our state camp. This resolution would call for a 1% low-interest, long-term loan with a $5,000 forgiveness feature to be given to farmers in need for this kind of assistance here in our state. In my many conversations with farmers around our area, we find that this is what they're actually going to need. They don't want a handout. They just want, let's say, adequate financial security to hold their estates together and continue their farming operations into the future. Another very worthwhile program which our state office has come up with, which I believe has a great deal of potential in meeting drought needs in the future, not only in South Dakota but across the country, is our Farm Training Adjustment Program. This will provide valuable farm training for farmers who are depressed with income loss. It provides them with an educational incentive of which they would receive for attending ag classes in their communities. These ag classes would teach relevant subjects like artificial insemination, farm management, diesel mechanics, cooperative principles, other matters like this, and would enable them to meet their basic living expenses as they wait for the next growing season. I think this would also help encourage young farmers to stay on the farm and give it another try. I'm proud to be a part of an organization which is so responsible to the needs and interests of our farmers in this state. I appreciate the opportunity that we've had to speak on their behalf in their interests, and look forward to our continued cooperation in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim and panelists, for your opening statements, and we're going to move immediately into listening now to questions from our audience here. And Freddie Lawrence from my county collared me about a question right before we came up here, and I don't know where you are, Freddie. I can't see too good with these lights shining in my eyes, but I thought it was a good question, and he's a ASC county committee man, and I wonder if he's here, if he'd restate that question for us. Would you do that? Where are you, Freddie? Oh, would you come to a microphone so they can hear you? Is that mic live? Turn the switch. Turn the switch on top there. Just slide it one way or the other. Now tap on it. There you go. Pays to know somebody, Freddie. You get on first that way.
Well, thank you, Harvey.
Yeah.
Well, my question has to do with our payments, the disaster payments that are, I'm from Spink County, and we figure they're all going to be, or most of them will be ready to be made this year. And we've had some questions, guys that sell a lot of cattle or something, that maybe they don't want those checks this year. They got their last year's check this year, and we were wondering how is the Internal Revenue Service going to look at that if they find out that the things have been computed. All you have to do is come in and sign the form, and then your check is ready. And if you don't do it until 77, then is there going to be any comeback on that?
Okay. I think the question is pretty clear, since we got the payment last year in the calendar year 75, or 76 rather. Should we double up on that payment this year? And I think, George, you could probably answer that question. I think it's a good question because a lot of farmers ask me that too.
Freddie, that's kind of an unusual question. You know, we're concerned about lack of income to a certain, but it is a good question and has come up many, many times. We've had not a ruling in writing, but in discussing the time of a payment with the IRS, basically they will say that if the money is available, that this would be considered income for this particular year. I think the farmer can, as far as we're concerned, without having an official policy set up, as I mentioned, obtaining the documentation, and sometimes you refer to it as red tape, but we tend to become more bureaucratic as we become involved in these things, as we mentioned, auditors and GAO and this type of thing. But there is an application for payment statement. It's Form ASES 516. You pretty much control when that will be returned to our county office. If that is not returned to our office, the payment will not be made. So if it isn't returned to our office until after December 31st, 1976, that's when our county office will be in position to make the payment. So the farmer himself pretty much controls when he wishes to get the payment once we have the supporting data in our office. So as far as giving you a specific answer, I will have to say that the Internal Revenue tells us that if the money is available, and as I said, we have a side draft authority where we draw side drafts on the Federal Reserve System, and it's negotiable, so the money is available, but you control the date that you get the payment by returning the application to our office.
Could I respond to that?
Sure, Owen.
Okay. Along those lines, I have a slightly different interpretation, but I am quoting from the latest issue of the Doane Farm Journal, which some of you get. And I'm going to read as follows. Also, cash basis farmers who receive disaster payments under the 1973 Farm Act, wheat, feed grains, or cotton, may elect to report the disaster proceeds in the year which the income received from the crops normally would have been reported. Applies to years after December 31, 1973. Now that's a little bit slightly different interpretation than you have, George. Do you indicate that the Doane people are wrong, or is that a fair interpretation?
No, I think that's reasonable to assume that the Doane people are right. I don't think it's any contrary to what I was saying, because if you normally, for example, in years past when you had the commodity loan was in operation, when the loan was delivered, or the farmer himself elected when to report the loan proceeds, and this would be pretty much in the same pattern, you see, so it wouldn't be anything wrong as far as we're concerned in holding back your payment statement until when you want to earn the payment. So it'd be in the same, about the same things what we're saying.
Right. I might add that that same situation applies to federal crop insurance payments. The farmer has the election to report the payments he received for federal crop insurance in the year in which they were received, or in the year in which they would normally be reported. As long as I have the microphone, I just want to correct one misstatement I made in my earlier address. I have a note that says that I said that the McGovern Water Conference was on October 13th, and it is actually on October 30th. I know it's on October 30th. It is on October 30th. It gives me a chance to plug the water program a second time, and it also proves that I can't walk and chew gum at the same time.
We farmers have learned to be very tolerant of lawyers, Owen. So it's all right. Nobody's perfect. Emil, did you want to say something? Emil Lorix used to be in the legislature and president of this organization.
And I used to be head of the Farm Security Administration. I say Maurice McLinn made a wonderful explanation of what they can do for us today. I visited with a banker friend before coming up here, and I'm glad that you're using the local banks. Now, this banker must have some misunderstanding. He said, I want you to know I'm against socialism. And I understand that this is socialized capitalism when we taxpayers guarantee these loans up to 90%.
If 9% interest is socialism,
Yeah.
I don't know. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Brandsma, you made a fine explanation, and I concur with everything that's been said about the ASC, and I judge it principally on our own county of Kingsbury. There's a dedicated group of workers that will dedicate it to the program and will do everything they can to live up to what it provides. On the application for disaster loans, the farmer reports his crop to the Huron office here. Does that constitute application for disaster payments, or does he have to specifically go out of his way to make further applications? Don't you have a working relationship with crop insurance or will you please explain that a little?
You understand the question?
Yes, Emil, there is a very excellent working relationship between federal crop insurance and ASCS. We're a policyholder with federal crop insurance, has insurance, we'll say, on wheat. If he comes into a crop insurance office, they normally will suggest that he go over to the ASCS office and file a claim for low yield. And on the ASCS 574, which is the application for payments for, which is a claim for low yield payment, there is a question on there, does this crop covered by crop insurance? And if it is, crop insurance does the appraisal, determines the production loss, and furnishes us with the information, so they do work together. Now, there have been situations where we're human. We make mistakes once in a while, and sometimes we forget to ask the question, is this covered with insurance? And crop insurance has done the same thing, but eventually it works out. If it's our fault, we'll do everything we can to try to get it straightened out. But there is a very harmonious working relationship. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Further questions? Yes, sir.
I'm John Olster, Farmers Union member from Davison County, East and South Dakota. First of all, I want to thank the panel for giving of their time today to come here and talk about a very vital issue to South Dakota, and hope that it will be meetings like this that will help us cut through some of the fat and get down to the things at hand. But I want to talk about another type of drought and the economic effect that it's having on South Dakota. We have seen a drastic decline in the price of hogs in the last few months. The first part of last week, I was visiting with our own State Department of Agriculture, and I was informed that since the 1st of July until the 1st of October, that just in the sale of slaughter hogs alone in this state, nothing about feeder pigs or nothing about breeding stock, the American farmers have lost in excess of $3,800,000. That's in price reduction alone. If this price continues for the next 3 months at this present level and doesn't decline anymore, we stand to lose another $9,200,000. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is in excess of $13 million. That will not be spent on the main streets of this state. The economists will tell us that agricultural dollars, the new wealth from agriculture, will turn 7 times, but it will turn 4 times before it leaves the state. Now, if it turns 4 times, we're talking about then $52 million of income to this state. We're already aware of the reduction that we're going to have from lack of crops, no property tax on that, the disbursement and disposal of large herds of cattle, no property tax there, but our state stands to lose 4% of that 52 million that's never going to get here, 4% of that 52 million that will never be collected in sales tax, and that's in excess of over $2 million that state government is not going to get. Now, agriculture is to South Dakota what oil is to Texas, and coal is to Pennsylvania, and textiles are to Massachusetts. And agriculture is to this nation the backbone of it. I think that it would be fitting at this time, and I would ask that this body here ask President Ford, and we can't ask Earl Butz anymore, but we ask President Ford to treat the American farmer and the American people in kind, like he did with the grain embargoes, and declare an embargo on all meat imports. We are told that supply and demand regulates our price for farmers. I won't dispute that, but I'd like to make one other point. Why is it only to the farmer? Now, I'm not particularly giving an agriculture speech here today. I'm talking about basic economics, the basic fundamentals. Every time that the live hog price declines 1 dime, then it is justifiable to expect a 7 cents a pound decrease in the grocery store, because that's the amount of that live hog that winds up in the butcher shop. 70% of that live hog goes to the butcher shop. So every time we take a dime, it ought to come down 7 cents in the grocery store. It ought to come down about 6 cents on beef. But we haven't seen this. I think there is only one way that we can get out of this hole that we are now in. Number one, let's do all we can about the drought. But number two, we can't take 2 in a row. We've already taken, we've had to disperse our cattle, large numbers of them, at drastic low prices. Now we're catching in on hogs. We don't have a grain crop. So I'm glad to hear the talk of water. We get the water out here. We have to depend in South Dakota to run our government from agriculture. Production times price. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John, for your statement. I think since he raised the issue of this matter of meat imports, Jim, do you feel like you'd like to respond to the general philosophy about meat imports, or any of you for that matter? I know there's a lot of disagreement on its impact, its importance, and how to deal with it, but if anybody has some kind of fresh statement to make about it, it might be appropriate at this time.
We, in the Senate, passed unanimously last year an amendment which I offered, putting a 90-day moratorium on beef imports. We thought we'd try it out because nobody yet is able to measure the exact amount of detriment to beef and pork prices from imported meat. We don't know exactly. We know it damages prices some, and I thought we'd try it out. Well, the amendment that I passed in the Senate was defeated over in the House, and it never got to the President. This year, we're seeing, I think it's we're up to about 1.23 billion tons of meat that's coming in, which is roughly about 6% of the total meat consumption in this country. I would be for an immediate trial period, like I tried to do last year, of putting a moratorium on beef imports just to see what would happen. I think we'd find a very beneficial test period, and I think you'd see a more realistic import level following that. And I agree with John Oster. If we're going to talk about non-government interference and letting the free market system work, it's not going to work very well when these foreign countries subsidize their growers, their livestock producers, and then have them import meat at a cheap rate into this country to compete with our livestock industry here in a manner I consider to be very unfair.
Philip Testerman, Mrs. Willie, you were up there before. Did you want to ask a question? Well, we'll give you a chance. Okay.
No? Somebody was up there. Somebody had it turned off.
Okay. That's a specific question probably that we'll get answered for you in just a minute.
I have a question over here too after a while, Harvey.
Okay. Fine, fine. Senator Testerman. Philip Testerman.
Mr. President,
Senator Testerman. That's the way we do it in the Senate, so we got to do it that way here.
I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Smith, if I could, please. And what approach would Mr. Carter take to develop and stabilize our foreign markets for our farm products?
Well, first of all, he feels like we've got to restore our credibility with our foreign customers, and I would point out to you what he did it's one thing to show you his interest in foreign markets. When he was governor of the state of Georgia, he established in other parts of the world 5 different trade offices for the exportation of Georgia products. He would push very vigorously with the necessary resources that are available now, not only with the Department of Agriculture, but for expanding export trade. He would have the Secretary of Agriculture be a full cabinet member, and we would not, government agriculture of this country would not be a pawn to be used by the State Department. I think that's about the best thing we can do.
Ron? We said over here first, Ron. You be second, okay? Identify yourself, please. I can't see very well. You're dead. I mean, your mic is dead. You're not.
Okay.
There you are. Loud
I'm
enough.
Ray Weiss.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, I admire this gentleman that talked a while back on this pork. I'm also a pork raiser, and I didn't have much crop down there in Dual County. And I understand that some people are getting oats and so on at a reduced price. Is there anything on corn, I mean, for the hog producer, as far as getting any oats and corn or barley, something, some feed grain?
I think I can answer that one. I'm going to let our ASC expert do that.
And how much would we be allowed, as far as oats, would we be allowed to keep enough for seed?
Well, maybe I'm getting a little far out. Maybe I shouldn't have jumped up quite so fast, but I thought I didn't mention the livestock feed program that is administered by our agency. One of the senators could probably tell me exactly when this happened, but I think in the Act of 1970, in which they required the secretary to set aside about 50 million bushels of oats or of feed, and they determined that oats would be the best feed, that would be the most universal type of feed, and we've been nibbling away at that, and we're down now in the vicinity, as near as we can tell, to about 3 million bushels that are left, because other states, and including our state, have been using this oats for livestock feed. The original act that provided emergency livestock feed was set up back when Commodity Credit had all kinds of inventory running out their ears. We had corn, we had oats, we had wheat, we had barley, we had everything under the sun, and it was a device that was used to help alleviate the surplus problem. We no longer have Commodity Credit inventories of major feed grains. So the Act of 70 provided for the set aside for emergencies. It does not provide or does not give Commodity Credit authority to go out and buy other feeds at the present time. So we're limited to the oats that is in Commodity Credit inventory. And this is what is being sold to eligible producers at the current county loan rate. As far as, and this is basically was designed, and we thought of trying to preserve foundation herds. And so for some reason or another, hogs are usually considered into a feeding situation, and we understand the plight of the hog feeder, but we're bound by the laws as they are set up.
Sure, Owen.
I don't want to quarrel with Mr. Brandsma, but I would like him to respond to this. The authority of the Secretary of Agriculture, as I read it, is a discretionary authority. It allows the Secretary of Agriculture to stockpile a 75 million feed grain emergency reserve. As he says, and he's correct, it's now down to under 3 million bushels of oats. Now, my explanation is of why they're not doing it is that it costs too much money. But do you have any comment to make on that, sir?
I really, as I read the basic law itself, and as it's been explained to us, that the department feels that they do not have authority to go out and purchase other grains, that it's been limited to the inventory that Commodity Credit has. I don't think it's a matter of money, because, as I said, we have the Commodity Credit Corporation under the administration of the Department of Agriculture, and ASCS is vitally involved in this, and they have tremendous borrowing authority. So I don't think it's a matter of money. I think it's a matter of authority more than it would be the amount of money that's involved.
Jim wants to comment on that? Senator, rather?
I have had some lawyers look at that 1974 Disaster Relief Assistance Act, and the President, the interpretation I've been given is the President does have authority without any further legislative authority to purchase up to that 75 million bushel of grain. So it's there, and I think we ought to ask the President to use that authority.
We have to cut this off at 15 minutes after 12 by the big long Gene clock on the wall, and that's about 7 minutes from now. So we want you to limit your questions now very specifically directed to a panelist, rather than give us philosophical speeches, which I love to listen to. Ron, I know you'll do that. Identify yourself for the audience. Put the mic on too, just flip the switch. There you go. No? There you go.
On now?
Right.
I'm Ron Reed from Oldham, South Dakota. First, I'd like to say something in defense of Mr. Brandsma. I've known George for many, many years, and he's one of the finest friends that we have in the state ASCS office that we have out on the farm, and I'm sure you people agree with that if you've had any contact with George. All he does is try to carry on the program to implement it in Washington. But my statement is going to be more or less directed at Mr. Smith. Back in July the 22nd, a group of businessmen and farmers, mainly from Grant County, a few from Roberts County, scattered around the state, and Ben Radcliffe, our state president of the Farmers Union, and myself were fortunate enough to be in this group, about 15 farmers. We happened to be honored to have an audience with the Secretary of Agriculture. But before and this audience with him was mainly to deal with, of course, the drought and disaster in South Dakota. But he swung into the room. I just went and checked with Ben again to see that I really had this thing correct, because it's really been bugging me. As he came in to meet with us, the first statement before he said hello, goodbye, or found out who we were or anything at all, he said, I just came from the State Department, and I've just got the word that we're going to stop all meat import, beef import, through the free port of Mayagüez in Puerto Rico. He said, we just got this thing finalized. He's going to bring some good news to us. Well, that happened to take place in July. Here we are in October, and they're still using this free port. I've done a little research of my own, and I found out there's another big packing company that has gone down there since and has started operating, and there's 2 or 3 now, one small one, 2 large ones, who are bringing meat in mostly from Australia, a little from New Zealand, and using this meat not against their quota, but allowing us to come in here and compete against our meat in South Dakota. Now I want to direct this question at Mr. Smith, because I realize he's very influential on agriculture with Governor Carter. I was going to say President Carter, but I'd be very careful, but Governor Carter. And my dad always taught me home on the farm, if a man will lie to you, he'll also steal from you. So my question, Mr. Smith, is this. Well, we hope, if we do have a new administration in Washington, will we be treated this way under the new administration?
I think that's a very fair question, and I'm happy you asked it. Certainly, you will not be treated this way. You will be given consideration that's due to you. President Ford acted just this weekend on the meat import thing, but as I said earlier, in my opinion, it's too little and too late. Certainly, the cattle industry, I guess, is hit hard or harder than any segment of our farming economy, but you can rest assured when you have Jimmy Carter in there that you will be given fair consideration, because first of all, Jimmy Carter is a farmer, and he's a small businessman, and so we won't be dragging our feet on something like this. This thing has gone on too long.
Okay. Somebody want to wish to speak ahead of Emil Lorix, who's spoken once? That's what we say in the legislature, Emil. Yes, sir.
Is it on? All right. Mr. Wollman, I don't know who I should direct this question to, Mr. Brandsma or Senator Abourezk, but concerning this here feed grain program of 1970, I believe it was, and I believe the price on that oats was 47 cents or something. Now, I come from Corson County out there, and we have operators out there in the county who is buying this oats for 7 cents a bushel. Why is this?
$0.07?
This, I think you have reference to the Indian BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, as a so-called distress program in which Indian operators are authorized to buy oats at a much different rate than an average operator there in Andy County in South Dakota. So this, I hope, explains the situation. Basically, the law on which we operate is at the current county loan rate, and basically it's a subsidy of about $1 a bushel for every oats that a producer gets, whereas the Indian operator gets a little better deal than the white operator. Okay, this lady's question down here, she mentioned under the feed grain program, we're involved in low yield, where she sold the silage to a neighbor and it was put in his silo. Under the procedure that we used in 1975, there was a slight reduction where the corn was converted to silage, and this was changed this year. So as far as your payment is concerned, there will be no reduction for the silage. The producer and you have entered an agreement in which you sold the silage to him. He'll pay you for that. ASCS will make the same payment to you that it did to the neighbor.
Wasn't that nice?
I'm Larry Keene, and I was wondering if the senator would maybe give us a little information on the 1% loan to farmers, and if he has any information on the special farm educational program. I think putting money back into farmers' pockets right now is the most important thing, not to let them get 9% loans later, but get that loan fast now.
We testified on that, and I don't know what the progress of it is. Thanks for that supporting statement, though. Before we break for lunch and listen to more questions, one thing I want to do, there's going to be a political panel discussion, that's tomorrow, isn't it? Tomorrow morning, where we're going to have our candidates for office introduced and participate in the panel, and one that's here today that's very important to all of us, and to me particularly, because we served in the Senate together, and I'm involved in her campaign as well. Grace Michelson, I'd like to have her stand and be recognized, and working hard every day. Grace is a farm girl from Iowa that came up here and married good and has done a whole lot of work for South Dakota, and she understands agricultural issues very, very well, and you'll have a wonderful opportunity to hear her express herself on those tomorrow, and visit with her when she's around here during the day. Will you do that? Young fellow there that wanted to ask a question before we get back to you, Emil, I'm sorry, but we've got to spread this out.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Well, my question was, they got the hay transportation now. What about a feed grain? Like you can, if you feed 1 pound of corn to a cow during the winter, you can get by with 3 pounds less hay. Why can't they get transportation in here for like the corn or oats to feed the cattle and hogs if they can get transportation for your hay? Because you can feed less hay if you got a little bit of grain to substitute it.
I think it's a fair question. They did expand it to silage, did they not? Maybe George can answer that. I think there's a reason why it isn't done, but
as has been indicated, we started out with hay transportation, and then it was limited to unharvested wheat and barley straw and oat straw, and it was expanded to silage, and there are requests in right now for the other various commodities. It's kind of customary or not. Where Western feeders, cow operators will go into eastern South Dakota and buy ear corn and transport it out to Dewey County, for example, or even beyond that. And all these suggestions are being forwarded. And I might say that ASCS is administering this program for the Federal Disaster Assistance Agency, FDAA. As I patted myself and about both hands patting myself on the back, all the good things we do, they have found out that we do have a good delivery system, so this agency has asked us to administer these programs for them. And it is rather difficult because we work and then we have to go to Denver and we have to go to Washington. We work through our congressional delegation, our senators and congressmen, which have given us a lot of valuable assistance in putting pressure to bear on these other agencies so that it finally comes back to us back here at the county level. So all these suggestions are taken under consideration. We merely carry it out. But so your suggestion is well taken, and I'm sure that these suggestions have already gone in and will continue. The senators are here, they can hear it firsthand, so they can take it back and give us some help on that.
Hate to break it off. Jim Berg. Representative Berg is a good legislator and farmer from Wessington Springs. Just leave that mic on so we don't...
Okay, I have a question for Mr. Smith again. Does Governor Carter support a national food reserve, and if so, how will it be administered?
That's a good question.
His position on a grain reserve is he favors up to, keep in mind I said up to 60 days a reserve supply of our domestic consumption, with at least, and again, at least 50% being controlled by the farmers.
Emil will give you one more shot at it, but you better be brief, I'll tell you that.
I've learned something. You better get all your questions out when you're up here, because it's not easy to get up a second time.
What is it?
Well, with all you have to say about Nixon, he knew how to wield power. 4 years ago, he saw to it that the department...
What's your question?
1% loans and grants. Why can't we do it now?
Okay.
Well, you don't have to answer me that. I want to ask Senator Abourezk this question about transportation. We have a real crisis on the Mississippi River, Lock and Dam 26. If we lose water transportation, it's going to mean millions of dollars of loss to us farmers. And the railroads, what can we expect from Congress in the way of assistance to rehabilitate the railroads of South Dakota? We've lost 400 or 500 miles of it already. I know you've been fighting for that, Senator.
I support Lock and Dam 26, the Alton Lock and Dam, which was killed in the last week of Congress. The proposal was killed because of a threat of a filibuster. We've gotten from Congress this year some $600 million to try to rejuvenate railroads out in this part of the country. It's not going to be enough, but my proposal, which I've been plugging for couple, 3 years, which is going to be probably a long time being accepted, is a really big overhaul of the entire national railroad system. And I think it's the most essential thing we can do is to try to put in an electrified rail system, northwest, east, and south, that will haul freight and passengers around this country. It will save energy, it will be cheaper in cost, and it would be one of the best things that could ever happen to this country. If we really redid the railroad system, a total overhaul of it, and made it efficient and fast and low cost. Thank you.
We're going to have to cut this off because of time, but let me tell you this. We're going to be around here. Many of these panelists will be around here during the noon hour to eat with us. Some of us will be available all day this afternoon and most of tomorrow. Our Drought Assistance Office put together this book, which among other things talks about economic impact on your county and your school district. And if you're from a certain county in the state or a certain school district and you want to know how much the sell-off of cattle is going to affect your school budget, we've compiled all that information so you can make better planning for those emergencies in the coming days and weeks and months. Is Mike McNamara here anywhere? Michael? Would you, oh, there you are. And he's one of our staffers, and Mike would be willing, I'm sure, to be around and talk to any of you individually about revenue impact on your area and all kinds of other things that we've compiled here that we really can't get into now because it takes so long, and some of you are interested in that and some of you aren't. Now, I know you have a lot of questions and a lot of things you'd like to talk about, and I would hope, even Ben, that maybe we could extend this question and answer thing maybe into the political panel tomorrow. A lot of those things would be answerable when Larry Pressler is here. Jim Abner won't be here, but a representative of him I'm sure will be here, and our congressional candidates will be here. And some of these things we can carry over into that discussion tomorrow. So we'll do the best that we can in a limited time frame, and I think it was great that we have this kind of talent, this kind of willingness to participate in public discussions with you here today, and especially to you, Bobby Smith, our guest from afar. We're thankful that you were able to come here, and I wished you could spend a couple of days with us. I'm sure that you'd like it here. Now, we've got to break this up and get ready to go through the lunch line, and Ben has an announcement about that. Thank you very much.
I want to thank all of the panelists. It's been a great forenoon. A lot of the agenda says that this is time for the report, annual report from the President and from the Secretary of the South Dakota Farmers Union. And the bylaws require the report. I'm going to shorten it a little bit because we are running a little behind time, and because I'll be on the program again this evening with President Tony Deschamps. I want to report that this has been a good year for the South Dakota Farmers Union. In fact, it's been one of the best years in recent history as far as membership is concerned. Proud to report that our membership is up 950 members to a total of 14,707 Farmers Union members in South Dakota. That's well over a third of all the members, not quite of all the farmers in South Dakota, not quite a half. I challenge you in the year ahead to enroll at least half the farmers in South Dakota into the Farmers Union. With this position of leadership among farmers that we hold in Farmers Union goes the responsibility, of course, of carrying the message and presenting the plans and the goals for all of the farmers in the state of South Dakota. Major credit for our favorable balance sheet this year must go to Farmers Union cooperatives and their local affiliates, GTA, Farmers Union Central Exchange, and Farmers Union Marketing and Processing. All of these cooperatives have been loyal and faithful in paying educational funds. I want to express our sincere appreciation to these fine business organizations for their tremendous contribution to Farmers Union. Let me say with all the emphasis that I can muster that it is incumbent upon every Farmers Union member who values the Farmers Union program to give all of his or her patronage to these great cooperatives and to their affiliates. Our Young Farmers Department, headed formerly by Dave Wensloff, and Dave went to Colorado to go to work for the Colorado Farmers Union, is now headed by Jim Eichstadt. And you saw Jim up here on this platform earlier today. And we're going to continue our Young Farmer program, including Young Farmer banquets around cooperatives in counties. We have several scheduled, and if you're not scheduled for one of those in your area, contact me or Jim Eichstadt. Our Farmers Union insurance program is becoming an ever more important part of Farmers Union. In addition to the financial contribution that the National Farmers Union insurance companies make to Farmers Union, the 60 Farmers Union insurance agents stationed throughout South Dakota are effective and able spokesmen for the Farmers Union cause. Our appreciation for their efforts cannot be overstated. We enjoyed a very successful youth program again this year. Well over 2,000 farm youth participated in either study or Farmers Union camp programs. We held 2 youth camps in the Black Hills with the largest attendance ever, 6 district camps, as well as Farmers Union day camps in most counties. Our youth also participated in 2 all-state camps out at Bailey, Colorado. Our bus program has been going gun-ho again this year, with trips running to all corners of the nation, including 3 bicentennial trips to the northeast coast and a very successful Alaskan trip. And our bus just returned from the northeast part of the nation yesterday on the 3rd and final of our 3 bicentennial trips. South Dakota Farmers Union is passing another milestone this year with the construction of a new addition to your home office building in Huron. And if you haven't stopped to visit that new facility of yours, stop in Wednesday morning before you go home, and we'll have our staff there ready to take you on a tour of that fine facility that you own that we've put an addition onto this year. At this point in my report, then, I want to publicly express appreciation to my staff and all employees of the South Dakota Farmers Union. They're a great bunch of people who work hard for you, often for long hours, and always with concern and loyalty. I also want to personally thank the county presidents, who almost without exception are willing to drop everything when they are called on to advance the cause of Farmers Union as a responsibility of the office that they hold. Now, this year, South Dakota has been hit with the worst drought in at least 40 years. It certainly is the worst drought in my memory. This drought, coupled with the failure of the administration to provide adequate disaster assistance, has already driven many of our fellow farmers to the wall. If the dry weather continues for another year, many will be forced out of business. Now, I don't know that there's ever been a program that we've worked harder on than we've worked in trying to bring some drought assistance to our farmers this year. I've been in Washington 3 times this summer. They've been long trips and they've been hard trips. We've met with Secretary Butts, we've met with our congressional delegation, and we've made a tremendous effort with little success. Farmers throughout the state are extremely unhappy with the federal administration's handling of drought programs this past summer. In every instance, drought assistance programs that should have been available were withheld until desperate farmer pressure was applied, and then it often came too little and too late, and many of you can attest to that. An example is the poor handling of the hay freight assistance program, which was announced only after hundreds of farmers had already been forced into buying hay. After further pressure from distressed farmers forced to move cattle long distances to pasture, the subsidy was applied to trucking cattle. Finally, after much of the available silage had dried up or had been cut, the freight assistance became available for moving silage. And we heard today that the freight assistance has been increased now after many or most of the cattle have been sold and much of the hay has been hauled. Again, too late in most cases. The same calloused attitude was displayed when farmers were penalized by loss of payment if they cut their dried out cornfields to provide much needed feed for their cattle herd. At no time it has ever appeared that Secretary Butts or the administration was on the farmer's side. With $1 billion farm loss statewide, thousands of farmers are caught between a rock and a hard spot and will be making the vital decision this fall as to whether they will be able to stay in the farming business. Unlike employed wage earners, unemployed farmers have no unemployment check to turn to. Now, since Congress has now adjourned, the only alternative remaining is a crash development of federal or state programs utilizing existing laws to provide assistance for drought-stricken farmers who might otherwise be forced out of agriculture. Farmers Union will continue to play a major role in attempting to solve this critical problem which threatens South Dakota's entire economy. I'll have more to say about that tonight when we have a little more time, At this time, I want to thank all of you for being so cooperative during this past year and helping us to build the biggest farmers union that we've seen in decades. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, Cliff got his crew together over there. It's sure a pleasure to welcome you all to the 61st Annual South Dakota Farmers Union State Convention. I want you all to know this isn't all my speech. This is in case I get asked some questions. I got to be able to look up the answers real quick. Before I get into all the goodies, I would like to mention a thing that happened here last week. Cliff Ott, who is our state regional insurance manager, was out to Denver for a meeting, and on his way back home, he flew back home, and the stewardess on the plane come by and asked if he wanted a glass of champagne. And he said, sure. And he took a glass of champagne, and the stewardess asked the guy beside him, would he like a glass of champagne? And the guy says, no, he didn't want, he would sooner commit adultery. Cliff handed his glass back, and he said, I didn't know I had a choice. And also, I would like to request that any Farmers Union members that are here today that are patrons of Farmers Union Marketing and Processing Association to register at the booth located in the northwest corner. Lloyd is over there waiting for a lot of you to stop by. And also, I would like to urge all of you to stay around for a while this evening after Tony DeShant, National President, gets done visiting with you and talking to you this evening for the big social get-together, which will be located at the Marvin Hewitt Hotel Ballroom. And Kyle Evans and company from Wessington Springs will be providing the entertainment. And we have some goodies lined up for to munch on over there. And a chance just to visit and talk over old times and talk about what's going to happen in the future. And just relax for the evening following a busy day at the convention. And now on with the report. In your convention booklet, you can review in detail the receipts and disbursements of the 1975-76 fiscal year. Total receipts amounted to $762,432. And these are derived from many important sources, but I would like to point out a few. In this past fiscal year, we received $485,917 in educational funds. Of this total, $421,211 was received from the 3 regional cooperatives of Farmers Union Central Exchange, or CENEX, Farmers Union Grain Terminal Association, GTA, or Farmers Union Marketing and Processing Association, or FUMPA. $43,953 was received from local oil cooperatives. $20,726 was received from local elevator cooperatives, and $26.59 was received from district Farmers Union camps. October is co-op month, and a time to celebrate the good benefits derived from our cooperatives. Cooperatives are people working together to better serve themselves in supplying, in selling, and serving the products that they produce. But as we take time to celebrate Co-op Month, let's take a look at what we expect from them. Do we expect co-ops to sell products cheaper than the fleet store down the street and yet service it for nothing? Do we expect co-ops to buy our grain at the highest prices in town, and yet when we need to buy it for feed, sell it lower than anyone? Do we expect co-ops to sell our cattle at the highest prices, and when we buy new feeders, have the lowest prices? But what we should expect is the best possible prices for supplies, markets, and services, but at a price that we know is fair to everyone that patronizes the co-op. It is a time to remember that the patrons who own, run their local cooperatives, as well as their regionals, benefit directly from their patronage. You as Farmers Union members, friends, or guests are the ones that benefit directly. And I feel it is extremely important during the crisis time facing agriculture throughout most of South Dakota this year that we maintain strong cooperative ties. Many local communities are dependent on the success of their local co-ops. The harder we all work to make our cooperatives strong, the better life will be in rural South Dakota. Also listed in the convention booklet are the names of the local cooperatives who contributed money this past fiscal year. I would like all cooperative managers, employees, and directors of the regional and local cooperatives that are with us today to please stand. I know we got a good bunch of them here, so if they'd all just stand up. Let's give them a round of applause. And I call on each of you Farmers Union members to stop at your local cooperatives and express your thanks for the support of the Farmers Union. And if your local cooperative didn't contribute, I call on you to work for a change in that for this next year. Also, an important part of receipts is the state service fees paid by the National Farmers Union insurance companies. The amount is $37,883.36. Tried to give you too much over there, see? This is 1/2 of 1% of all premium paid by South Dakota insureds. Insurance is a necessity in today's world to cover your life, your health, your personal belongings, your investment in operation, or just protection of your income. The coverage provided by Farmers Union Insurance cannot be surpassed, but we as Farmers Union members, friends, or guests that are here today can only benefit if we purchase from our local insurance agents. I would like to ask all the Farmers Union insurance agents that are here or employees to please stand. Let's give them a hand. Also in receipts, we received $85,347 in membership dues payment. As membership is the foundation of the Farmers Union, we are proud of our 5th straight year of membership increase in the Farmers Union. This past year, as Ben mentioned, we increased 950 members to a total of 14,707 members. We express our sincere support of the local cooperatives that provide membership dues checkoffs, and also the local Farmers Union insurance agents who collect dues with all farm-rated insurance policies. There is no easier dues collection than there is through the local cooperative checkoffs and the Farmers Union insurance agents. These two methods of membership not only make the Farmers Union strong, but also the local cooperative patronage as well as the local agents' policy holders, because they all benefit from the Farmers Union. But I must not forget to express a sincere appreciation of the Farmers Union fieldmen for the fine cooperation, not only from the local cooperatives and agents, but from the Farmers Union members who spend hours upon hours collecting dues door to door, of which over half of the membership is derived. Without the fine support of our local Farmers Union members making our organization strong through membership, we would not have our cooperatives or insurance agents or the Farmers Union. Before I leave the area of receipts, I would like to call to your attention in the booklet the list of locals, counties, individual, and cooperatives that contributed to the legislative and budget funds this past year. Without their continued support, the work of the organization would suffer. Also listed are the counties that exceeded their past 3-year membership average. And we are proud to announce that we had 62 counties exceed their past 3-year average in membership in 1976. And in the back of the room, also in the map up there, the counties that have exceeded their 3-year membership average have a gold star or a silver star in their county. As I mentioned earlier in my report, total receipts were $762,432 for this past fiscal year. But in turning to the page on disbursements, they are quite detailed and self-explanatory. But I may call to your, and I may mention for your understanding, that in some areas, many programs are combined and listed under one heading, such as Education Department expense. In this total includes all money spent this past year for Youth Leader Tours, third-year Youth Award Tour, the Torchbearers National Convention Award Trip, the Youth Leaders Conference, the Young Farmer Seminar Weekend, the Outstanding JC Young Farmer Trip, the Young Adult Seminar in Bailey, County Young Farmer Banquets, Young Farmer Weekends, co-sponsored by the local cooperatives, Senex, and the Farmers Union, the Golden Age Festival, District Education Director's expense, Junior Advisory Council expense, etc. So when you review the disbursements that are all listed within your program, if you have any questions, I hope that you will ask them and that I will explain them to you, but they're pretty much in detail, so I don't want to go through the whole list and read them off and waste a lot of time doing that. But if you do have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them and explain any questions that you have. Total disbursements for this past fiscal year were $504,098. So this left a net receipts of $258,333. As the statement of net worth shows on the bottom of that same page, net worth of our organization as of August 31st, 1976 is $981,972. Also for your review on the next 2 pages of the convention program is the financial position and the balance sheet of your organization. And if you have any questions on these 2 sheets, I would be glad to answer them. And I would like to close my report by extending the appreciation to the office girls of the Farmers Union. Mary Lou Davis, who is the secretary to the president, Verla Lindblad, who is my secretary, Margaret McKinney, who is the bookkeeper, Sue Forbes, who is membership secretary, Peggy Curtis, who is education secretary, and Peggy Clute, who is circulation department secretary, did much in the help and the preparation of this convention and of the operation of the state office to make sure that it functions properly. Farmers Union is your organization, people working together to better their lives, to better their communities, their state, and their nation. You in Farmers Union can be proud. You have an organization in which to work with others to accomplish this goal. As the Farmers Union song says, farmers helping farmers whenever there's a job to do. Farmers Union members, stand proud. You have a great organization, a great Farmers Union affiliated organization. It has been my pleasure for the past 6 years to present the financial report to you. I hope it will be my pleasure again next year. Unless there are any questions, thank you very much.